Hello everybody, I am Radha G. Bhatt, a teacher of English at JNV Tumakuru, Karnataka. I will be taking the very last lesson in the supplementary reader for class 10th, The Book That Saved the Earth, written by Claire Boyko. Next slide. About the author, 1925 to 2019. She is a famous author of children books. Her main works include plays and programs for boys and girls, The Cry Baby Princess, The Book That Saved the Earth, etc. Claire penned over 70 children's plays. Next slide. About the lesson or play. The Book That Saved the Earth is a story that revolves around a book of nursery rhyme titled The Mother Goose that has been picturized as the book that saved the earth from an alien attack. Next slide. Characters. Characters are historian, great and mighty think tank, apprentice noodle, Captain Omega, Lieutenant Iota, Sergeant Op, off-stage voice. Next slide. New word meaning, squiggles, illegible writing or markings, invasion, attack, mighty, very brave, earthling, people of the earth, pantomimes, silent acting, twirling, moving, primitive, ancient, manned, controlled by man, dubiously, doubtfully, trifling, insignificant. Next slide. Prologue, introduction, scene 1. Mother Goose is a well-known book of nursery rhymes in English. Do you think such a book can save planet Earth from a Martian invasion? Read this play and find out. The Book That Saved the Earth is written in the form of a play. Time, 25th century. Place, the Museum of Ancient History, Department of the 20th century on the planet Earth. The Book That Saved the Earth is written in the form of a play. This imaginary play is set in the 25th century at the Museum of Ancient History. Next slide. Historian. The historian welcomes audience to the Museum of Ancient History in the 25th century. She informs them how a book saved the earth from a Martian invasion in 2040. The play emphasizes the importance of book. The historian tells the audience how the Martians invaded the earth in 21st century and how a well-known book of nursery rhyme saved the planet Earth from their attack. The play emphasizes significance of book. So all the actions in the play and characters are set in the 20th century. She tells the audience that 20th century was called the era of book. In those days there were books about everything. They taught the people everything. The incident relates to the Martian invasion of 2040. In fact, the invasion never took place. A single book stopped it. You may ask, a noble encyclopedia or a book about rockets and missiles? No, it was none of those. It was a book of nursery rhymes. She turns on the projector. It shows the Mars space control. Let us move to the next slide. Mars space control. Great and mighty think tank, commander-in-chief, most powerful and intelligent creature, the ruler of Mars, orders the invasion of Earth. Think tank calls Martians a handsome race and they are more attractive than the ugly earthlings with their tiny heads. Think tank has a huge egg-shaped head. He is great, most powerful and intelligent creature. He is the ruler of Mars. He is the commander-in-chief. He behaves like a despot. He relishes being praised and flattered by all who are under him. No one dare to disagree or argue with him. So great and mighty think tank is unimaginable. He orders apprentice Noodle to make him talk to their manned space probe to the planet Earth to collect information about Earth and Earthlings. He declares Martians a handsome race in comparison to the ugly Earthlings with their tiny heads. Next slide. Scene 2. Captain Omega, Lieutenant Iota, and Sergeant Op arrive Centerville Public Library on the Earth, but they fail to understand where they are. They puzzle to see books and cannot identify them. Captain Omega informs that they have arrived on the Earth without any trouble. They arrived Centerville Public Library on the Earth, but they cannot figure out the location. Iota holds a book. There are 2000 books stored in a library. Martians have never seen such books in their lives, so they make wild guesses about the books. Next slide. Think Tank closely examines those books and calls it a sandwich. Sandwiches are the main staple of Earth diet. He orders his crew to eat them. At last, Op tastes it and finds it not delicious. He says they are dry as Martian dust. Further, he added how the Earthlings can get those sandwiches down without water. Think Tank identifies those peculiar items are nothing but sandwiches, which are the staple diet of the Earthlings. To confirm it, he asks Captain Omega to eat one of them. Finally, Op bites down on a corner of the book. He does not find it delicious. He says they are dry as Martian dust. Next slide. Apprentice Noodle. The trainee under Think Tank, Noodle points out that he has seen surveyor films of those sandwiches. Earthlings did not eat them. They used them as some sort of communication. Think Tank orders them to listen to the communication device. Noodle intervenes and saves the situation. He tells that he has noticed through films that the Earthlings don't eat those sandwiches. They are actually communication devices. Next slide. But Captain Omega fails to hear anything. Noodle suggests that the Earthlings did not listen to the sandwiches. They opened them and watched them. Think Tank clarifies that those sandwiches are not for ear communication, but they are for eye communication. He asks Captain Omega to take the large colorful sandwich, which appears to be important. Think Tank orders Omega to listen to them. Omega and Iota take 2 books from the case and hold them to their ears to listen to it intently. But they hear nothing. Noodle again handles the situation. He discloses that the Earthlings don't listen to sandwiches, but they open and watch them. Think Tank gives his judgment. He declares that those sandwiches are not for ear communication, but they are for eye communication. He orders Captain Omega to observe a large colorful sandwich which appears to be important. Next slide. Omega picks up a very large volume of Mother Goose. It appears to contain pictures of Earthlings, but they cannot understand the little lines and squiggles and dots and pictures. Noodle suggests that space people should be given vitamin to improve their intelligence. Next slide. After consuming vitamins, the crew is able to read nursery rhymes. Omega reads the rhyme with great seriousness. Mistress Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? With cockle shells and silver bells and pretty maids all in a row. Next slide. Think Tank interprets the rhyme in his own way. He declares that the Earthlings have discovered how to combine agriculture and mining. They can grow crops of rare metals. They can grow high explosives too. Next slide. Then Iota reads out the rhyme of Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, the cow jumped over the moon, the little dog laughed to see such sport, and the dish ran away with the spoon. Next slide. Think Tank interprets the rhyme saying that the earthlings have reached a high level of civilization. They have taught their domesticated animals musical culture and space techniques. Even their dogs have a sense of humor. They may be launching an interplanetary invasion. Next slide. Think Tank orders to notify the invasion fleet that there will be no invasion today. Then Op reads the next rhyme. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men cannot put Humpty Dumpty together again. Next slide. Oop turns large picture of Humpty Dumpty towards Think Tank and audience. After looking at the picture, Think Tank declares that the earthlings have seen him. The world had a great fall means they plan to capture Mars central control and him. Next slide. He asks Noodle to prepare a space capsule for him to escape. He orders the Martian fleet to evacuate Mars and decides to flee to the Alpha Centauri, 100 million miles away to escape from Earthlings. Next slide. Historian tells that is how one dusty old book of nursery rhymes, Mother Goose, saved the world from a Martian invasion. Earthlings resumed contact with Mars and became very friendly with the Martians. Great and mighty Think Tank was replaced by the wise and wonderful man Noodle. The Earthlings taught the Martians the difference between sandwiches and books. Earthlings have established a model library in the Martian capital of Marsopolis. But there is still one book that the Martian can never bring themselves to read. Have you guessed it? Yes, Mother Goose. Let us have a look into the points to remember in brief. The book that saved the earth is a unique story where the author describes futurism in a fun and mysterious way. It is written in the form of a play. The play opens in the 25th century. The play emphasizes the significance of book. Great and mighty Think Tank is the commander-in-chief and the ruler of Mars. He is greeted by apprentice Noodle. Think Tank is planning to put the earth under his control. Next slide. Think Tank's preparations are shattered when Lieutenant Iota is scanning books in a bookcase. Captain Omega, Lieutenant Iota, and Sergeant Op arrive on the earth. Think Tank from the Mars interprets the book to be crude refreshment and calls it a sandwich. Iota and Omega are ordered to eat the sandwich. Finally, Op tastes and finds it not delicious. Next slide. Noodle advises the book to be opened and understand. Omega is able to transcribe the code on taking vitamins. Omega transcribes nursery rhymes on Mistress Mary, Cat and the Fiddle, and Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. Think Tank comes to conclusion that Earthlings are planning to attack them. Next slide. Think Tank orders Noodle to prepare space capsule. He orders the Martians to evacuate the planet Earth immediately. Think Tank decides to migrate to Alpha Centauri, which is 100 million miles away from Mars. Noodle, who has become friendly with the people on the Earth, takes over as the leader. Earthlings teach the Martians the difference between the sandwiches and books. The historian is very happy at the earth being saved by the dusty old book of nursery rhymes Mother Goose. Character sketch. Character sketch of the great and mighty think tank. Think tank likes to be called the great and the mighty. He orders and commands. He is the ruler of mass, but has no intelligence. He thinks books to be sandwiches. He is wrong about everything. He demands that the crew obey him. He likes to pass on others' idea as his own. He is a coward who simply boasts about his power. Think tank interprets the old book of nursery rhymes in his own unique way. He concludes that the people on the earth are more advanced and powerful. Character sketch of Apprentice Noodle. Noodle is one of the crew members of the invasion team that came to invade the earth. He is known as Apprentice Noodle. He is the coordinator between think tank and the invasion team. He echoes think tank in every manner. He is a very clever creature. He knows that think tank, being commander-in-chief, has to be obeyed. So he keeps on praising think tank and also passing sarcastic remarks. It is only Noodle who thinks particularly and differently about the books which were considered as sandwiches to eat. But think tank took over the idea as his own. But Noodle is not sad at all. He is a blind and true follower of think tank. Justification of the title of the play. The book that saved the earth. Let us have a look into it. A good title should reflect the theme, idea, or the traits of a character. It should revolve around any of the above. The story or the play should be woven around any of them. In the play, The Book That Saved the Earth, a book of nursery rhyme of Mother Goose, is responsible for stopping the Martian invasion on the earth. Think tank, the ruler of Mars, plans to invade the earth before lunch and sends probe to get more information about earthlings. They enter a library but cannot figure out what items books are. They take vitamins, increase their intelligence, then read the rhymes from Mother Goose. Think tank misinterprets the rhymes, takes them as threats to him and the mass. Scared, he calls back probe, drops the idea of invading and escapes with his subjects to Alpha Centauri, 100 million miles away from the mass. Moral of the play is, it is totally incorrect to invade another country. Next slide. Read and find out. Read the questions given here and find out the answers and write it in your notebook. First question. Why was the 20th century called the era of the book? Second. Who tried to invade the earth in the 21st century? What guesses are made by think tank about the books found on earth? Why did think tank wish to contact space probe? Thank you one and all.